Every human being at some point in life pauses and asks the same question: what does it mean to be truly happy? The question transcends language, culture, and religion. It is the quiet yearning that echoes in the soul of every person who has tasted success, yet felt emptiness, who has gained the world, yet sensed that something essential was missing. In this universal tension between possession and peace, between abundance and meaning, lies the heart of the human dilemma. Our modern world has become a grand theater of desires. We are told that happiness can be measured by wealth, by the size of our homes, by the prestige of our careers, by the number of our followers, by the symbols we wear. We are trained to pursue comfort as though it were salvation, and money as though it were a measure of worth. Yet beneath the surface of this glittering illusion, countless lives are marked by restlessness, anxiety, and an unspoken sadness. The more we have, the less certain we feel of who we are. Maimonides, who lived 8 centuries ago in a world far removed from ours, observed the same condition in different forms. Though his age lacked our machines and screens, it shared our confusion about happiness. He saw how people of every class sought joy in what could be counted and owned. He saw rulers who mistook power for peace, merchants who mistook profit for purpose, and scholars who mistook pride for wisdom. And in all of them, he saw the same hunger, the hunger for permanence in a world of passing things. For Maimonides, this confusion was not merely emotional or moral, it was intellectual. Humanity suffers not because it lacks wealth, but because it misunderstands what wealth is for. We seek happiness in things that cannot sustain it. We build palaces of pleasure upon the sands of impermanence. We cling to possessions that time will eventually erase. In this pursuit, we lose sight of the one possession that cannot be stolen or destroyed, the cultivation of the mind and the perfection of the soul. He begins with a simple, rational observation. Everything external to us is temporary. Health can fade, fortune can turn, relationships can change, and power can dissolve. If happiness depends on what can vanish, then happiness itself is doomed to vanish with it. To tie our joy to external circumstances is to hand over our peace to chance. But if happiness is something inward, something built upon understanding, virtue, and wisdom, then it endures through fortune and misfortune alike. Maimonides does not deny the goodness of material comfort. He does not condemn money or pleasure. What he condemns is confusion, the confusion between what is a means and what is an end. Money, in his view, is neither evil nor holy. It is useful. It serves life, but cannot define it. When wealth becomes a master instead of a servant, the soul becomes enslaved to endless want. The man who chases gold becomes poorer with every coin, for desire multiplies faster than satisfaction. The human dilemma, then, is not that we desire happiness, but that we do not understand it. We confuse pleasure with joy, comfort with contentment, excitement with peace. We measure happiness by sensation instead of comprehension, yet all sensations pass, and only truth endures. For Maimonides, happiness is not found in the thrill of the moment, but in the stability of the mind. It is not the fire of emotion, but the light of understanding. The happy soul is not one that feels constantly pleased, but one that lives in harmony with what is real. To illustrate this, Maimonides often turned to the image of the wise physician. The wise man, he said, treats the soul as a doctor treats the body, by identifying the cause of disorder and restoring balance. Ignorance is the disease of the soul, and understanding is its cure. Just as the body becomes healthy when its elements are in proportion, the soul becomes happy when its faculties, desire, emotion, and intellect are rightly ordered. When desire rules the mind, chaos follows. When the mind governs desire, peace returns. Happiness is therefore the health of the soul, not a gift of circumstance, but the result of right order. Consider how modern life reverses this order. We live as if the purpose of intelligence were to serve desire. using reason to invent new ways to indulge the senses. We refine our appetites instead of our virtues. We confuse the ease of life with the excellence of life. But Maimonides reminds us that reason was not given to justify pleasure, but to illuminate truth. To live rationally is to see the limits of desire, to understand its place within the harmony of the soul. The person who lives this way may enjoy wealth, but will not depend upon it. He may experience loss, but will not be destroyed by it. For his happiness rests upon something higher, knowledge, virtue, and alignment with divine order. In the Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides describes the human search for meaning as a ladder. The first rung is the world of material need: food, safety, comfort. These are necessary for survival. The second rung is moral virtue: justice, moderation, compassion. These refine the passions and bring the self into balance. The highest rung is intellectual perfection, understanding the truth of things, and through that understanding, coming to love the source of all truth, God. True happiness belongs to this third level, where the mind contemplates what is eternal. The man who ascends this ladder discovers that happiness is not the pursuit of pleasure, but the perfection of perception. The human dilemma, therefore, is not solved by more abundance, but by deeper awareness. The problem is not the lack of wealth, but the lack of wisdom about wealth. We have mastered the art of acquisition, but not the art of sufficiency. We know how to multiply our possessions, but not how to measure their worth. We are skilled in earning, but untrained in understanding. Maimonides would say that this is why humanity feels lost even amid success, because it has forgotten that the purpose of life is not to possess, but to know. To the modern listener, this may sound abstract, yet its implications are profoundly practical. When one lives by understanding, one's desires find their natural limits. One begins to see that the pleasures of life are good when enjoyed as means, but destructive when pursued as ends. Wealth becomes a tool for justice and generosity. Success becomes an opportunity for gratitude, and adversity, far from being an enemy, becomes a teacher, reminding us of what truly matters and what never did. Maimonides' diagnosis of the human dilemma remains as relevant today as it was in the 12th century. The world changes, but the soul does not. The human being still seeks happiness and still mistakes its shadow for its substance. Yet those who learn to see as he saw, with clarity, moderation, and reverence for truth, discover that joy does not depend on possessions, but on perception. It is not wealth that brings peace, but wisdom. And thus, the first step toward true happiness is not to acquire more, but to understand more. For in understanding, the soul awakens to its own freedom, and in that freedom, it finds peace. When Maimonides spoke of happiness, he did not mean an emotional state that rises and falls with fortune. He meant something far more stable, a condition of the soul grounded in understanding. In his vision, joy was not an accident of circumstance, but the natural consequence of knowing reality as it truly is. Happiness was not something that happened to man, but something man became through wisdom, virtue, and alignment with divine truth. In the Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides explains that the ultimate purpose of human life is knowledge of God. This knowledge is not mystical ecstasy or blind belief. It is the intellectual apprehension of truth, the clear, rational perception of the order, wisdom, and unity present in creation. To know God, in Maimonides' sense, is to understand the structure of the universe as an expression of divine intelligence. And the more one understands, the more one loves the source of that understanding. Thus, happiness is both intellectual and spiritual, the union of knowledge and love in the soul of the wise. He divides human pursuits into levels. At the lowest level are the bodily needs: nourishment, shelter, health. These are essential for survival, but have no permanence. Above them stand the social and moral virtues: justice, temperance, courage, compassion. These refine the passions and bring harmony to human relationships. Yet beyond all these, he identifies a higher perfection, the perfection of the intellect. It is here, he says, that true happiness resides, for the intellect is the divine element within man, and its fulfillment is participation in the eternal. In Mishneh Torah, Maimonides writes, "The knowledge of God is the greatest joy of all joys and the delight of all delights. To him, the joy of knowing God is not symbolic, it is literal. The intellect, when it perceives truth, experiences a kind of rest, a deep satisfaction that no material pleasure can match. For in that moment, it fulfills its very nature. Just as the eye delights in light and the ear in harmony, so the intellect delights in understanding. To know is to live in accordance with what we are, beings created for comprehension." But Maimonides is careful to guard against arrogance. Knowledge, he insists, is not an end in itself, but a path to humility and devotion. The more one knows of the universe, the more one perceives the vastness of divine wisdom and the finitude of human power. True wisdom leads not to pride, but to reverence. The wise man does not see himself as master of the world, but as a participant in its divine order. In recognizing this order, he finds peace. In aligning his life with it, he finds happiness. Money, therefore, plays no essential role in this vision. It is an instrument, not a source, of happiness. In the Guide, Maimonides warns that those who seek fulfillment in wealth confuse necessity with perfection. Possessions serve the body, not the soul. They provide means for living, but not reasons for living. The man who makes them his goal loses sight of his purpose. Wealth can sustain life, but wisdom gives it meaning. One may possess great riches and remain miserable, for the soul, deprived of truth, hungers amid plenty. In his 8 chapters, Maimonides explores the psychology of virtue as the preparation for true happiness. Virtue, he teaches, is not an arbitrary moral rule, but the medicine of the soul. Just as a physician brings the body into equilibrium, the wise person brings the passions into balance. Excess of any kind, indulgence or deprivation, greed or asceticism, distorts the natural harmony of the human being. The good life, he writes, is the middle way, the path of moderation and reason. Only in this balanced state can the intellect operate freely and the soul experience peace. Happiness then depends on the alignment of the moral and the intellectual. Without moral virtue, the mind is clouded by desire and fear. Without intellectual clarity, virtue lacks direction. Maimonides sees the two as inseparable. Ethics prepares the soul, philosophy perfects it. The good man becomes wise, and the wise man becomes good. Their union yields happiness, not a fleeting emotion, but a stable condition, born of order, harmony, and understanding. At the center of Maimonides' thought stands the idea that the human being is a microcosm of the universe, a reflection of divine order within the limits of the finite. The same wisdom that governs the stars, he says, governs the soul. To understand that order is to align oneself with it. The mind that contemplates the laws of nature participates, however faintly, in the wisdom of God. That participation is joy. It is the joy of knowing that the universe is not chaos, but coherence, not accident, but purpose. In this sense, the life of study and contemplation is not a withdrawal from the world, but an ascent within it. For Maimonides, the philosopher and the prophet are united in their pursuit of truth. The philosopher seeks through reason what the prophet perceives through revelation. Both are lovers of the divine intellect. The higher their understanding, the deeper their happiness. It is not ignorance that brings peace, but understanding, not blind faith, but enlightened devotion. Yet Maimonides was no recluse. He served as physician to the Sultan of Egypt, judge of the Jewish community, teacher and spiritual guide. His philosophy was not an escape from the world, but a way of living within it wisely. He taught that one must first provide for bodily needs and social responsibilities before seeking intellectual perfection. But once those needs are met, one must not mistake them for the goal. The true end of human life is to transform knowledge into devotion, to see God in the light of reason, and to love Him through that vision. This union of intellect and love is the heart of Maimonides' perspective on happiness. It rescues reason from dryness and faith from superstition. To love God without knowledge is sentiment. To know God without love is emptiness. Happiness arises when these two meet, when understanding awakens reverence, and reverence deepens understanding. The soul, in that union, finds its rest. He illustrates this through the image of light. The ignorant live in darkness, perceiving only shadows of truth. The partially wise live in twilight. They glimpse reality, but confuse it with illusion. The truly wise live in daylight. They see things as they are, illuminated by divine order. And just as sunlight brings warmth as well as clarity, so the light of understanding brings joy as well as truth. This, says Maimonides, is the happiness of the perfected soul. Therefore, money, honor, and pleasure are not evils, but they are inferior goods, temporary, conditional, and fragile. They can adorn life, but not fulfill it. True happiness belongs only to that which shares in eternity, the intellect that perceives truth and the soul that loves it. For as wealth fades, wisdom endures, as pleasure passes, understanding deepens. As life itself ends, the order of divine truth remains. To participate in that order is the supreme joy, the one happiness that death itself cannot destroy. To understand how Maimonides unites reason and faith in the quest for happiness, we must look deeply into his vision of the human soul. For him, the soul is not an abstract notion or a poetic metaphor. It is the very structure of human existence, a hierarchy of powers that reflect the harmony of the universe itself. Every part of the soul has its proper role. The vegetative part sustains life, the animal part moves and feels, and the rational part understands. When all these dimensions are ordered according to reason, the soul mirrors divine wisdom, and in that reflection it finds its joy. Happiness, then, is not an accident, not an emotion that arrives by fortune or vanishes with pain. It is the state of a soul that has become rightly ordered, whose reason governs its desires, whose virtues bring balance to its passions, and whose intellect contemplates truth with reverence. This inner order, Maimonides teaches, is the true image of God within man. When the soul lives according to that image, it experiences what he calls the perfection of the intellect, and that perfection is the highest joy. But this joy is not a cold, cerebral delight. Maimonides is often misread as a pure rationalist, yet beneath his logic lies an extraordinary tenderness, a reverence for the beauty of existence that flows from understanding. He does not separate the intellect from devotion. He sees understanding itself as an act of worship. When the human mind perceives the divine order in creation, when it grasps the harmony of causes and purposes that shape reality, it does not merely acquire knowledge, it participates in the divine. Knowledge becomes communion. To think rightly is to love rightly. This union between knowledge and love forms the spiritual synthesis at the heart of Maimonidean thought. Faith without reason, he warns, is superstition, a fragile belief that withers under doubt. Reason without faith is emptiness, a sterile logic that sees the world but not its meaning. Happiness requires the harmony of both, reason to reveal the truth, and faith to awaken awe before that truth. When the intellect contemplates the world as an ordered manifestation of divine wisdom, faith deepens into gratitude. The soul, seeing all things in their right proportion, finds peace in their unity. Maimonides expresses this beautifully in the Guide for the Perplexed, where he describes the human ascent toward God as an inner transformation. At first, man knows God only through tradition and imagination. Then, through study and reflection, he begins to discern divine wisdom in the world's design. Finally, through the disciplined love of truth, he comes to apprehend not God's essence, which is beyond comprehension, but the order of his works. In that contemplation, the soul is elevated beyond the tyranny of passion and fortune. It lives no longer for what changes, but for what is eternal. This, says Maimonides, is the state of the truly happy man. In this synthesis, every act of genuine understanding becomes sacred. To study nature is to study the divine. To reason about ethics is to seek the justice of the Creator. To observe the heavens, to heal the sick, to govern wisely, all are forms of participation in God's wisdom. The line between science and spirituality dissolves, for both flow from the same source, the divine intellect expressed in creation. Maimonides, a physician by profession and philosopher by vocation, saw no contradiction between healing the body and elevating the soul. Both are acts of harmony, reflections of the same divine order that sustains all life. The path to happiness, therefore, is not withdrawal from the world, but deeper engagement with it, guided by reason, purified by virtue, illuminated by faith. The one who walks this path sees the unity behind diversity, the purpose within change, the permanence within the fleeting. He sees that joy does not depend on what he owns, but on what he understands. The more he knows of truth, the more he loves its source. The more he loves, the more he rejoices. In that movement from understanding to love and from love to joy lies the essence of human perfection. Maimonides calls this the intellectual love of God. It is not emotional worship, but the serene delight that arises when the intellect perceives the divine order of things. This love is not commanded, it is inevitable. Just as light brings sight and sight brings joy, so understanding brings love, and love brings happiness. The more the soul knows, the more it delights in the perfection of its knowledge, and because the truth it contemplates is eternal, the joy that follows it is also eternal. Such happiness does not fade with age, fortune, or death. It belongs to the immortal part of the soul, the intellect that participates in God's own reality. This view may appear distant from modern sensibility, which often measures happiness by emotion. Yet, Maimonides' insight is profoundly psychological. He understood that emotions are fleeting because they depend on change. The joy of understanding, however, is stable, because truth does not change. When the soul perceives what is eternal, its joy shares in that eternity. It is the peace of a mind that no longer resists reality, but embraces it. It is the stillness of one who no longer asks life to serve his desires, but desires to serve the order of life. This harmony between intellect and devotion transforms even ordinary existence. The wise person can engage with the world, earn, work, teach, heal, love, without being enslaved by it. He can enjoy pleasure without worshipping it, use money without depending on it, experience sorrow without despair, for he knows that beneath all change lies permanence, beneath all complexity lies order, and behind all things stands the one who gives them meaning. This awareness, quiet and steady, is happiness. Thus, Maimonides' synthesis is not an escape from life's struggles, but a new way of seeing them. Pain and joy, gain and loss, success and failure, all become part of a larger order that the wise mind can understand and the faithful heart can accept. Happiness does not require the removal of suffering. It requires the understanding of it. The soul that sees the divine order even in difficulty remains unshaken. It knows that all things, whether sweet or bitter, contribute to the perfection of the whole. This understanding is freedom, freedom from fear, envy, and discontent. In this synthesis, Maimonides unites the philosopher's clarity with the prophet's reverence. He shows that the highest reason is not pride, and the deepest faith is not blindness. True happiness is the fruit of their union, the serene delight of a soul that both understands and adores. Such a soul no longer wanders through life asking for happiness. It is happiness because it lives in truth. It does not depend on money, success, or approval, for its joy flows from an inexhaustible source, the contemplation of divine wisdom that permeates all things. This is the still center of Maimonides' vision, the human being as a bridge between the finite and the infinite, reason as the path that leads upward, and happiness as the light that dawns when the mind beholds its maker through the mirror of creation. The one who reaches this understanding, he says, lives always in the presence of God, and in that presence, every moment, every breath becomes joy. Maimonides never meant philosophy to remain in books. His wisdom was written not for the ivory tower, but for the living soul, for the physician, the teacher, the worker, the parent, the leader, the one who must face the world's noise and still preserve an inner quiet. His teachings on happiness were not an escape from life, but a way of sanctifying it through understanding. For him, philosophy and daily life were one continuous act, the search for balance, clarity, and peace within the order of divine wisdom. To live according to this vision is to reorder one's priorities, not by rejecting the material world, but by restoring it to its rightful place. Money, health, success, and comfort are not evils, they are instruments, and instruments must serve a purpose higher than themselves. Wealth is to be used, not worshipped. Possessions are to sustain the body so that the mind may rise toward understanding. The moment they become the object of love, the soul begins to decay, because love that clings to what perishes must perish with it. Maimonides calls us instead to love what endures, wisdom, virtue, and the divine order that animates them both. The first step toward such a life is moderation. The path of happiness, Maimonides teaches, lies between extremes. He calls this the golden mean, the art of balance. The soul must not be ruled by greed, nor numbed by asceticism. One must earn honestly, give generously, and live simply enough to remain free. To have what is necessary is a blessing. To crave more than is necessary is bondage. The happy person, he says, is content with little and thankful for all. Gratitude is the foundation of freedom, for it shifts the soul's focus from what it lacks to what it has, from scarcity to sufficiency, from comparison to peace. The second step is intellectual discipline. Maimonides insists that the cultivation of the mind is the highest human duty. Ignorance, he says, is the root of unhappiness because it leaves the soul at the mercy of illusion. When we do not understand the order of things, we fear them. When we mistake appearances for reality, we suffer disappointment. But understanding brings calm. It allows us to see cause and effect, to accept necessity, to marvel at the wisdom embedded in the world. Every act of learning, no matter how small, is an act of liberation. Study is therefore not a luxury for scholars, but a path to peace for all who seek truth. To read deeply, to think carefully, to question honestly, these are the true luxuries of the soul. The third step is ethical refinement. For Maimonides, virtue is the bridge between understanding and happiness. One cannot love truth while living falsely, nor contemplate order while living in disorder. The moral life disciplines the passions so that the intellect can see clearly. Anger, envy, arrogance, greed, these are the clouds that darken the mind. To master them is not to suppress emotion, but to bring it into harmony with reason. Compassion, justice, humility, patience, these are not ornaments of character, but instruments of perception. The pure in heart, he says, see truth more clearly because their desires no longer distort it. Virtue cleanses the lens through which the intellect beholds the world. The fourth step is spiritual awareness. Maimonides reminds us that every truth, rightly understood, points toward the divine. The more we comprehend nature, the more we perceive wisdom. The more we study human life, the more we discern purpose. Every discovery in science, every act of justice, every moment of wonder is, in essence, a form of worship. To live with this awareness is to dwell constantly in the presence of God, not through ritual alone, but through perception. Prayer, in its highest sense, is the silent gratitude of the intellect before the beauty of truth. To see the divine in the order of creation is to live in perpetual thanksgiving. The fifth step is integration, the unification of thought, feeling, and action into one coherent life. Maimonides did not separate the sacred from the ordinary. He taught that the same rational clarity that governs study must guide one's relationships, work, and leisure. The wise person eats to sustain the body, not to indulge it, speaks to reveal truth, not to display knowledge, earns money to serve others, not to dominate them. Every act becomes meaningful when performed with understanding. To live this way is to transform routine into reverence, work into service, and existence into praise. In the modern world, this teaching is revolutionary. We live amid endless stimulation, with desires magnified by images and comparison. We are taught to measure success by visibility, to equate happiness with consumption. But Maimonides offers a different measure: harmony. The happy person, he says, is not the one who has escaped struggle, but the one who understands it. Not the one who owns the most, but the one who needs the least. Not the one who dominates others, but the one who governs himself. His joy is quiet but unshakable. It does not depend on applause, but on alignment with truth. In practical terms, Maimonides' path can be lived by anyone. One does not need to be wealthy to practice moderation, nor a scholar to seek understanding, nor a saint to live ethically. One need only begin with sincerity, the desire to order life according to reason and to find peace in that order. This sincerity, he teaches, is itself a form of wisdom, for it aligns the will with truth. Every day offers the opportunity to practice it, to pause before acting, to think before speaking, to give without expectation, to learn without vanity, to live without excess. These small acts, repeated faithfully, reshape the soul. The result is not the dramatic joy that the world advertises, but something purer: serenity. The happy person, in Maimonides' sense, walks through life as through a vast and intricate garden. He sees beauty where others see boredom. He recognizes order where others see chaos. He is not blind to suffering, but he understands it within a larger harmony. His heart grieves without despair, rejoices without intoxication, and acts without pride. His peace does not depend on the weather of fortune, for it flows from a deeper sky, the clarity of understanding and the stability of virtue. This is why happiness cannot depend on money. Money belongs to the world of change. Happiness belongs to the world of permanence. Money can serve life, but cannot give it meaning. It can ease discomfort, but cannot heal the soul. The one who depends on wealth for happiness lives in constant fear of loss, for every coin is a reminder of its own fragility. But the one who depends on wisdom lives in freedom, for no external loss can touch the inner possession of understanding. When the intellect perceives truth and the heart loves it, the soul stands secure, and that security is joy. Maimonides' message reaches across the centuries. Happiness is not the prize of fortune, but the fruit of order. It arises when reason governs desire, when virtue refines character, when knowledge leads to reverence. It is the stillness of a mind illuminated by truth, the calm of a heart content with what is, and the gratitude of a soul that sees in every moment the reflection of the eternal. Such happiness is not loud, not fleeting, not for sale. It is silent, enduring, and divine. To live this way is to live wisely. To live wisely is to live happily, and to live happily, according to Maimonides, is to live in truth, to see the unity behind all things, and to rest in that vision as in the very presence of God.